Thank you, everyone, and welcome to our work session this evening, which will be centered around the fantastic DEI work that's been happening around the district. Just a couple of quick announcements that I have. I wanted to let everyone know this evening that spring sports registration dates, varsity and JV closes Friday, March 8th. Modified closes Friday, March 15th. Spring sports unified actually closes today on March 5th. Varsity JV, Monday, March 11th, and modified on Monday, March 18th. This will also be posted up on the district website, I believe, this evening. So thank you, everyone, and as a reminder, this is a work session this evening, so I know myself and my fellow trustees are excited about hearing all of the developments. Thank you, Dr. Monti. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, members of the board and members of our administrative staff and the broader Eastchester community viewing us tonight. We'd like to do several items in serial and rapid order. We would like to talk a little bit about the governor's state aid, what we could do as a community. I would like to speak a little bit to some of the issues raised about the budget last week and respond to them. Briefly talk about a few programs, Parent Square, Ruler, and our DEI effort. So everybody is clear. We are losing $429,000 based on the governor's proposal. I want to make it very clear that the governor's proposal on state aid as of January 16th was $16,701,867, right? Built into that number was a fake number called Universal Pre-K Aid. Guess what? We don't have pre-K. Ergo, we can't get the aid. So the real number that we were offered by the governor in terms of actual dollars versus nominal dollars is the $15,686,667, all right? If you look at what was budgeted for this current year in aid, and there I have the asterisk, if the governor had kept Save Homeless provision, which is decades old, and that means you do not reduce the amount of money to a district due to any adjustments upwards or downwards, quite frankly, in actual pupil enrollment. And if the governor had used 4%, a more realistic inflation rate than 2.1%, we would have received 16 million and change. If you take that 15 million point 6 that I noted up above and subtract that from what was actually budgeted for Eastchester, there's the loss of $429,000. We've met with Senator Mayer, we've met with Assemblywoman Paulin. We would appreciate anybody listening or who looks at this PowerPoint to call this number, 1-516-474-8390. And we're given the understanding that goes directly to the governor's office and staff. And please just recite to them, restore the $400,000 to Eastchester. And by the way, all the other districts in New York State who have an equal and legitimate complaint that their aid has been reduced, be it Mount Vernon, be it Scarsdale, it runs right across the state. And it's unfortunate, and we believe the money is there to restore the aid.
And Dr. Valenti, if I may just pause just for one brief moment. You know, what I will say publicly to the community is the efforts of this board and Dr. Valenti, and I believe I speak for all of the trustees here, on the advocacy work that we are doing with our local elected officials. Please support us in that effort. Call the governor's office. We sent out a letter as the Board of Education about a week ago. Thank you, Trustee Lombardi, for taking the lead on that and for all of your work with PTA Council and all of the other groups. We greatly appreciate that. This is money that directly impacts our children, our schools, and our district overall. Please, I implore you, call the governor's office, reach out to Shelley Mayer, reach out to Amy Paulin. They understand the issue. Our voices are heard, and you have the commitment of this entire board to continue our advocacy work to make sure that Eastchester is getting their fair share. One very quick point of clarification. I believe the number to call is actually 518. If we can just go back to that slide briefly. Dr. Chester, am I correct in that?
Albany is 518.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's 518, not 516.
518.
518, just a brief point of clarification. And if there's anyone out in the community that would like to help us along those advocacy efforts, please reach out to myself, Vice President Gagan, and Secretary DeMarco. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Valenti.
you. Michael, can we make that change? Yeah, Michael's making the change as we speak. One other observation when we met with the Assemblywoman, the week of March 11th is apparently a high-powered week when they'll be making a decision. So the sooner we call, namely starting this week, the more efficacy of the calls that they get to ensure we get the result we want. All right, let me move on. Some of our speakers last week, and we welcome comments on the budget, did make the point that there was a sentiment in going through the PowerPoint with us that we were favoring in some way the elementary schools or spending more at the elementary than the secondary level. Now, whenever we build a budget, there is never an effort to make sure that it's 1-to-1 ratio. You build a budget based on the needs of the youngsters, where you are in terms of program, but it did cause us to go back and look at actual numbers because there is a balancing approach that we do take in building a budget. So I wanted to start with next year's projected enrollment. And without getting too complicated, 45% of our children will be K-5. 55% will be grades 6 through 12, all right? Now, that doesn't mean we have to spend 45 at the elementary or 55 at the secondary. It simply means that's the distribution, and you may spend in the reverse order. There's no obligation legally or otherwise, but those are the real numbers. So let's take a look at starting with staffing, all right? Last week we said, and we continue, we will hire 2 FLES teachers, both for Ann Hutch and Greenvale. We're estimating salaries, benefits, figure about $120 per person. That's a good number to use, so that's $240. We talked about a band orchestra teacher, that's $120. Writing Revolution, we're dedicating $100,000 there. So in fairness, about $460,000 of the monies we're looking to spend under that category, or 64%, will go to elementary. The other 36% right now are targeted for our secondary. We are adding one counselor. Now, don't forget, we're replacing a retiree, but we want to add an additional counselor. That's $120,000, using that same number, unit. We're also looking at FTEs for science regents, AP expansion, et cetera, and that would be the equivalent position, $120,000. And we're also looking at expanding our grade 6 to 8 modified athletics, and we've dedicated $100,000 there. So that's about $250,000, 36%. So somebody could say, well, there you go. You're giving 60-some-odd% to the elementary and 36% to the secondary. And I would say, wait a minute. Let's look at technology. We spoke a lot last week about a lot of money for technology, okay? The technology investment for our elementary is only 42%. Next year, 6 to 12, it's 54%. And we're actually spending a few bucks on central administration. So let me show you where that happens. At the elementary, if you add Waverly, both network infrastructure and classroom technology, you can do some quick math. There you're at about $400,000. And Hutch, add your infrastructure at $280 and your classroom technology at $239, and you're over $500,000. Greenvale, you're certainly over $500,000 for the same items. Now you really start spending money. Why? You're dealing with larger schools, more classrooms, et cetera. So now you're looking well over $600,000 at the middle school, and quite frankly, $1.1 to $1.2 million at the middle high school, and of course, $125,000 at the district office. So when you start looking at percentages, at the elementary, 42% of our monies, general fund, will go toward the elementary schools in the neighborhood of $1.4 million. The secondaries will be getting closer to $1.9 million, 54%, right? So when I put all the pieces together, the major pieces, tech and personnel, and add them up, we're pretty close. All right, I'm not making a case here for secondary of spending more, nor am I making a case that we should be spending more or less in either area. I'm simply making a case that we ought to spend money where we need it and bring all the children along as we spend the money. So I would not want anyone to be of the mind that of the $4 million, and there are other dollars we could talk about, that we're pretty much in the ballpark of addressing it, and that we don't start with a premise we're spending more at one level than another level, but we want to spend as much at any level as is necessary to ensure that all the students are enjoying progress, okay? Quick word, we're going to start rolling out an improved parent-staff communications platform. I like the term one-stop shopping because, in effect, it does everything for a parent and for staff member, and it facilitates that communication. Robert Jacoby, our Director of Technology and CIO, has been working very hard on implementing this. It's a single place for two-way communication, Parent Square. It's a system where you don't have to go searching for teacher emails. It's right there. So families with more than one student would benefit from a single platform, and families can control the timing of non-emergency messages. So if you didn't want any non-emergency message to come, let's say, between 6 and 8 p.m., then you can control that as a parent. So you bring a lot to the table in terms of interacting with the school and the teacher and being more in control than our current messenger delivery system. So before we go to another system, I just wanted to say we're rolling out Parent Square. We're going to be having Robert put together a letter and additional information. And the timeline for implementation is going to be pretty much in the neighborhood of having it in place by the end of this year, maybe about 2 or 3 months where we have both systems in place so that we're able to test them, and then ultimately reaching a point where we just go with Parent Square, effective with the new school year. 2 quick points before Dr. Stowell talks a little bit about Ruler. We are making a major effort with the Department of Health and with Southern Westchester BOCES to accomplish Strategic Priority 5, which is the emotional health of our students, the psychological health, mental health of our students, K to 12. We are part of a $2.1 million grant with 9 other districts and Southern BOCES, and Eastchester will be the beneficiary over the next 2 years of a portion of that money. Conversations have begun how those monies will be distributed. We have several goals. Dr. Stowell is going to address Ruler as being one of them, a multi-year implementation program. We would like to see on our campus a satellite mental health clinic. Many school districts are now investing. And we think, upwards of 25 to 40 families immediately who would benefit from that type of service. So the county is willing to give us some grant money. Some money may come through this Southern Westchester BOCES partnership, and certainly we're prepared to provide in-kind monies. So I wanted to set the table for the fact that we have a much broader program in place under Strategic Priority 5, but let's get one piece of it and understand it a little bit better. So, Greg, do you want to come and do us the
And Dr.
pleasure?
Lenti, if I may, thank you very much for going through this. I know as I sat with the presentation after the last meeting, and it was posted up on the website, breaking out the investment level from elementary to secondary, I think this is very clear to the larger community. And one thing that really struck me based on some of the comments at the last meeting and going through the budget presentation is I was really laser focused on the tech closet and looking at what it was to what it is. You know, and quite honestly, just for the larger community to see that, and Luis in the back, thank you very much for all of your work on that. You know, one of the things, you know, quite honestly, that struck me is prior boards, you know, specifically before I think Jackie and Chrissy were actually on the board, and a lot of us sitting here around the table in prior administration, I'm shocked at the lack of moving those things forward and some of the cleanup work that this group here is embarking upon. So, you know, I do want to publicly state that, because I think as we go through these presentations very deliberately, and as you present that to us as a board, we look at this in a very different perspective and a different lens, perhaps, than prior boards. So I want to thank you for that. I want to publicly thank Dr. Stoll for his work, Rob Jacoby, Luis in the back, Dr. Chester, Madeline LeBou, who's here this evening, because I do think, you know, the days of this is just the way we do it and let's continue to roll that way, that's what got us into the messy tech closet. So I don't think we can have that moving forward. So thank you for clarifying that this evening. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Stoll, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt before you got up.
Thank you, Dr. Valenti. Thank you, Board of Education. I was told I've got 10 minutes. Shakespeare says, brevity is the soul of wit. I'm not that bright, but I'll do my best. Dr. Valenti shared with this board and the community the Ruler program in a previous presentation, and I'll want to go over some highlights and give a few minutes for questions and comments. I think when you bring in a social-emotional learning framework, it's critically important to ask yourself a few questions. One, do we all understand what social-emotional learning is? Two, why are we focusing it on schools? And more importantly, what's the impact of it? And three, what is the district's priority around mental health? And I think this board has been very clear with District Priority 5 that student social-emotional well-being, mental health is really important. I want to expand that and say it's also important for our staff. You know, if you have staff that also feel good about coming to work every day and feeling valued and feeling self-worth, your students are going to feel that as well. So I think it's important that as we talk about Ruler and we talk about SEL competencies and we talk about what Dan Goleman talks about, which is emotional intelligence, this is not just for students when we bring Ruler in. This is also for our staff, and we want to engage in, and I'll go into a little bit more about what Ruler is and flesh it out for you. But it's really critically important that social emotional learning teaches competencies and skills to our students and our staff about self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. Those of us in the world of work understand that these are critically important skills to have. It doesn't matter how well you do on a test. If you don't have these other skills, you're not going to be as successful in life. So these are life skills. And why is it important? It's not touchy-feely. These are skills for success post-secondary education. So the other thing this board and this community has heard us speak about, and I want to thank everybody part of developing a multi-tiered support structure, an MTSS, which is really our intervention system. This lays really nicely into our intervention system in terms of managing behavior and managing social emotional wellness in terms of an intervention. What does it do? It establishes a common language around emotions. It creates and sustains a positive cultural and emotional environment. Again, an affirming staff, and we'll hear about DEI later, that this helps in terms of a welcoming and affirming community and culture. And as I said earlier, it builds the skills of emotional intelligence, which is critically important for success. So our vision, and I will thank the folks that were part of this, our vision is when emotions matter, people matter. And if we think about that for a moment, if we care about people's emotion, each other as colleagues, as community members, as students, and we teach that, we understand that we matter to each other in a community. And that's critically important for successful school systems. So you've heard this before. Ruler is an acronym. It is from the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence, and it stands for having individuals recognize emotions. Emotions are not good or bad. They are what they are. They're either high energy or low energy. Do you recognize when you feel those emotions? Can you understand why you're feeling those emotions? Can you label, express, and regulate the emotions? That's the acronym for Ruler, and we use 4 tools: the charter, the mood meter, the meta moment, and the blueprint. So the board will have this. I'm not going to go, again, trying to be smart, trying to be quick. We have the charter, the mood meter, the meta moment, and the blueprint. These 4 tools are a framework. This is not a curriculum. They're not set lessons. We teach these frameworks. We want every staff member to understand them: classroom teachers, lunch cafeteria, support staff, clerical, central office administrators. We want to embrace and engage these things. And when we teach these 4 tools, and we'll talk a little bit about our implementation plan, that's really what I'm going to speak about tonight, about how we're going to implement this plan. So our implementation plan started this year, as we call it year 0. Every building had an implementation team made up of administrators and other staff, and staffs from all walks of responsibilities. Psychologists, social workers, clerical, make up these teams. And they spent 7 or 8 weeks training on how to implement this in their building and how to turnkey it. And what we've already done is we develop an implementation plan, and this is just a highlight of it. By the end of the year, each building is going to create a charter, and charter is one of the tools that we use in Ruler. Next year, we want to kick off the Ruler actual implementation by a kickoff event in early fall. We're going to start to introduce the mood meter and the meta moment in year 1 for all of our K through 12, all of our staff and all of our students. We want to send out monthly newsletters to families to talk about Ruler. What are we doing? So when kids come home and talk about the mood meter and say, I'm in the green zone or I'm in the yellow zone, families understand what that means. And we're also going to send out a scope and sequence of the ruler tools that we're teaching and when we're going to teach them. Year 2, again, some more professional development, some additional mood meter, meta moment work, but we're also going to start to introduce the blueprint, which is kind of a higher level conflict resolution strategy that we're going to start to implement year 2 when we fully understand and embrace the culture of ruler and understanding the mood meter and the meta moment. You need those to get to the point where you can use the blueprint. And what we're going to do in year 3 is do all of that, but we're also going to do a 360 review. We're going to look at some data, we're going to see the impact of this, and we want to make sure if we're going to continue to invest in this, in the ruler framework as an SEL program, we want to make sure that we can measure the return on investment for our students and our staff. I also want to, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the wonderful folks that are part of each building's implementation team that spent their time, that volunteered. Some of them are in the audience, so you know, thank you, Principal LeBeau. You are a fantastic leader of your building, but all these other folks that make up the implementation team. Each of these teams next year will be rolling out a plan for their staff. It starts on Superintendent's Conference Day, where I'm going to review it on the 10th, April 10th with everybody. And I have already shared with Dr. Valenti, and he will share with the board, and we can share with the community our actual multi-page implementation plan. How'd I do, Dr. Valenti? Did you time me? Perfect. Does anybody have any questions or comments about ruler? I know I went quickly, but I'm certainly happy to answer any.
I just have a quick question. Great presentation, a lot of great insight. Excited to see it come along. You mentioned the third year was a 360 formal review.
Correct.
Is there ongoing feedback in year 1, year 2 that if something is going wrong, you can fail fast and make changes and address that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm playing this in the implementation plan. There's a central lead. I'm the central lead. I'll be meeting with each team. We'll be getting feedback. There'll be informal, anecdotal feedback. You know, we'll be talking to students and things like that. When we talked about year 3, 360, we want to make sure that we're not just going to like have this thing on life support year 4, 5, and 6. We want to make sure that it has impact. But there are informal feedback loops that we will have every step of the way in the implementation.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Stoll, I just wanted to make a comment and say thank you for this. This looks great. I'm looking forward to seeing it next year. And also just wanted to say that the board has received a lot of positive feedback for all of your initiatives this year, particularly the flexible support program. We've heard from several parents how helpful it is for their kids, and that it's really allowing their kids to be able to stay in middle school and high school. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's an important feedback, and it really have to thank the Board of Education for making social emotional wellness, mental health a priority. So thank you for your support. Our students, I know firsthand that our students and families that benefit from it are eternally grateful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stowell. Our next presenters are quite well known to all of us, both on live streaming and here at the board level. They would like to talk about building level DEI work that began back in September and what's in store for us at the district level going forward. So let's welcome Dr. Chester and Madeline. Okay.
How long do we have?
10 minutes.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Valenti, district administrators and the board. I'd like to say what a pleasure it's been to work with Dr. Chester over the past few years, and thank in advance my colleagues at the elementary schools and the high school for sharing with us the information that we're going to present this evening as well. Okay, so a quick overview to take us back into where this started. We have our Board of Education resolution from May of 2023 that introduces this work and builds the foundation for us to move forward with it in the district. 2, building-based committees were formed as of that resolution, so now all the buildings have, which is a change from when we initially implemented this in the district, consisted of a district-level committee. We now have a committee at each of the buildings being led by the building administrators there. And we have a formation of district committee in addition to the building committees that we'll share more information about tonight, this evening. And if certainly we're going to discuss looking ahead and what that looks like within the Eastchester Union Free School District. Okay, so a little more about the board resolution from 2023, which included accepted recommendations from the district DE task force, which was the task force previously formed in the district prior to this resolution. We authorized the creation of 5 building committees for the 2023-2024 academic year, and the focus was specifically on welcoming and affirming environment from the New York State Culturally Responsive Sustaining Education Framework, which is there.
Yeah, so this is just an image of the 4 principles from the framework, and as Madeline said, we're focused this year on welcoming and affirming environment. And one of the main points where building committees started this year was asking the question, well, what exactly do we mean by welcoming and affirming environments? And looking deeply at the language that was given to us by the state, welcoming and affirming environments in schools focus on culture and communities, focus on relationships between students and teachers, between teachers and families. There's a focus on social emotional learning, and then a focus on representation, having students and families see themselves within the school community, in the building, and in the classroom. So one thing that I've learned in the last year is that, what we used to just consider to be DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I was at a meeting where of DEI leaders from throughout the area at BOCES, and they mentioned, well, now we try to say DEIB, so diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I shared that at one, I don't remember which building committee it was, but that when I mentioned that word, it seemed to really resonate with folks, that in the work they were doing with welcoming and affirming environment, belonging was a really great sort of summary word for what they were trying to accomplish at the school level. So our building committees are made up of teachers and staff, and as Greg said, with ruler implementation, we really encouraged staff members from a wide variety of different roles in the buildings to join the DEI committees. We have security guards, we have office personnel, also administrators, Board of Education members, and of course parents. One thing that we are still hoping to add at the secondary level is figuring out exactly what the role is for students. That's something that hasn't been done just yet. So here I've got a summary. There's a lot of words on this slide, but it's a summary of the work that's been done so far at the elementary schools. I did not divided out Waverly and Hutch Greenvale. What I did is, in looking at all of the things that have happened in actually a pretty short period of time, there were 3 categories that I saw. Cultural arts presentations, which include things that have been going on in our schools for years, like International Day, but also can be, new presentations like the Season of Miracles, looking at commonalities between multiple holidays in the winter season, or bringing in, I'm just looking at her name, escaped me, Jennifer Jones, the first African-American Rockette, did a presentation at Waverly. So those are some new things that have been added. I won't, go into detail under social emotional learning. I think that Greg did a really good job. Second step is the curriculum that we are using right now, leading up to implementation of Ruler. So all of that work was looked at this year through, a welcoming and affirming environment lens. I do want to highlight the peer mentoring that goes on both at Ann Hutch and Greenvale, where older students in 4th and 5th grade, provide, a little bit of guidance and support at recess for their younger peers, which is, really just gets to the heart of making students feel like they belong in a building. And then we have the final category, student and family outreach. At one of the buildings, there is a survey that's being developed all around the celebrations of families and whether or not those celebrations are reflected within the school, and to look at, hey, are we really capturing, everything? Have we missed something significant that means a lot to our students and our families? And in that same survey, there's also a question about languages that are spoken within the home or in the wider family, and whether or not families feel a need to have more translation services than are currently being offered. So that is directly related to, are we doing everything we can to help families feel, welcome, and that we are, affirming, the culture and the language background that they come from. Right, so always throw in some happy pictures of happy students. Right, those are some of the bottom picture is the peer leaders, I believe, from Greenvale. Okay. All right.
Great. And speaking of certainly of us providing some work in the building to welcome families, I first want to share that at Eastchester Middle School, we also have a building level DEI committee that consists of staff and teachers that have volunteered to meet frequently after school and take that work to the building. And one of the things that came out of that committee is that we, out of that committee, surveyed all of the students at Eastchester Middle School, and we asked them, what other language other than English does your family speak? And out of that, we collected 21 different languages, and then we invited our Safe Promise Club, International Club, Student Leadership Club, and of course the Building DEI Committee, and we created the word welcome, and we, in all of the languages spoken at the school, and now have that decorated down our main hallway for students and parents to acknowledge and see as they walk into our school and feel welcomed, hopefully. In addition to that, we had a visual presentation of inclusivity and celebration for diverse cultures as part of the showcase welcome signs, and we, out of the building level committee that includes parents and our Board of Education member, part of our work in that committee is consisting of selecting one of our 4 required assemblies for next year will come out of the decisions, and of the people working together in that committee will come out of there. Okay, so we have some of the beautiful smiling faces of Eastchester Middle School. The 2 pictures in the back are students and when we met with the different clubs and collaborating in creating the signs some weeks ago. And the front picture was during one of our presentations. Okay, so Eastchester High School shared that the first meeting scheduled is their first DEI building committee schedule is for March 19th, and during which they have already been engaging in discussion held with faculty on how to build understanding with those whom we differ and how to break down the walls that divide us. These conversations are to continue within the committee structure. And some pictures of our high school students there included.
Ms. LeBoux, can I, if I may, can I just interrupt for just a really
Do you
quick?
want to go back?
Yeah, could you just
Sure.
go back one? So a question I have in terms of kind of the building work at each of the individual buildings. Clearly, you guys have already met in the middle school. It looks like the elementary schools have met. The high school has not met yet this year at all, or is that just another meeting coming up on the 19th?
Yeah, as far as I understand, they haven't had a meeting yet. I know for this week with faculty, they began some of these conversations, like we summarized there, and their first meeting is scheduled for March 19th.
Got it. So I guess, Dr. Chester, I'm not even sure if you would necessarily know the answer to this. Considering it sounds like potentially the first meeting is going to be March 19th, is there a way to truncate some type of an outcome to have some level of an impact? Because we're looking at the first meeting happening and then the end of school is going to be right around the corner. So what's the thinking there? Only because I think from a board perspective, and very deliberately why we came together with this and passed the resolution was to try to have some impact in terms of all of the great, and I'm going to start using DEIB. I actually love that, by the way. All of that great work to have an impact for our children now. So I'm just curious, what can we do immediately, considering the first meeting is the 19th?
So, well, first and foremost, I would say that the members of that committee, the parents and the teachers, they are, really, ready to go. And I don't doubt that they will come up with something that they want to, get on the ground and get moving with before the year is out. And as the liaison to all 5 different committees. I was on the invitation that came out from Dr. Capuano that it even said, I know that, we're, coming at this, it's a little bit later in the year than we had hoped. And, you know, we will definitely make something happen before
Okay.
June.
Great.
So.
Great. And then just in terms of kind of the other schools, how often, because I know, you know, very specifically, we selected members of the community to be able to participate because, you know, I think Ms. LeBeau is you state here, and I think that's why all of the work that you've been doing throughout the year, we see the real life impact. And for that, I thank you. We hear it everywhere we go. How often are the schools, how often is your committee meeting, and, you know, what are some of the tangible things? I mean, I see some of them, but I'm just curious, because you really kind of are on the forefront of this for us as a district.
Yeah, sure. So we have meetings scheduled for the building level committee once monthly, and they're both building, but the staff only building level committee meet once a month, and then the building level committee with the parents and our Board of Education member. We've had some cancellation. Unfortunately, one of them was on a snow closure day, and we worked together to reschedule that as best we can.
Yeah, but I think you're ready to
So-
go on your third meeting at this point, right?
Oh, yeah, third or
So like
fourth,
2 or
yeah.
3.
But,
Yeah, maybe
but it,
4.
Yeah.
but you're doing DEI work in some capacity once a month
So-
throughout the entire year.
Just to clarify what Madeline is mentioning, there's another elementary building that had the same issue. In the Board of Education resolution, it was really specific how many teachers, how many parents, how many Board of Education members, in order to make the committee
Sure.
not be completely unruly and incapable of, you know, getting anything done. There were, you know, much to our delight, many faculty members that were like, but I want to do this work too. And so principals were able to harness that. So they've got like their building only committee that's doing some work. You know, I'm not at those meetings, so I couldn't speak to what's going on in every single one of our schools. And then there's the official, you know, board sanctioned building
Sure.
DEI committee.
And I think, Dr. Chester, to that point, I mean, by design, I think that's why we were specific. And, you know, again, Ms. LeBeau, you took it and ran with it on your own to say this is the minimum of what could be done based on what we set out. And you went way above and beyond in terms of having a meeting every single month, even if that's not with the community members. You're doing that at the building level that has a significant impact on those kids every single day. So just, again, thank you for that. But I just wanted to have an understanding because it's probably very similar at the other buildings
Yes.
where something's happening on a monthly basis.
No, we appreciate that, and it's really like, I'm thankful for the staff that wants to engage in this and certainly do the work at the building level, so very thankful for them as well.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, please, sorry.
So the meeting on the 19th, that's just for the,
That's the high,
building.
that is the high school that
Okay.
includes the parent members, the Board of Education liaison, which I believe is Christy.
Right.
Yeah, I'll be there, and the high school admin.
To your knowledge, is there anything going on similar to what the middle school's doing,
Not
It is
that
in the
not that
building,
I not that I know of personally, but I'm happy to
Oh,
get
I
that.
just-
I'm happy to get that information for you.
I just wanted to say, Dr. Chester and Mrs. LeBeau, thank you so much for all your hard work in this, and it's so nice to see some of the new initiatives that have been going on this year. I love the celebration survey and the welcome signs, and it's nice to see so much going on at the elementary schools and the middle schools. I am disappointed that the high school has not met yet, because we did pass that board resolution, as you said, in May of 2023. But I just wanted to thank you for all the hard work at the elementary and middle schools. Thank you.
We might be at our 10 minutes, but we have a little bit more about district. Okay, we got the okay. All right, so, you know, in working with the DEI Leadership Network that I'm a member of, we received some advice that in addition to having building committees, we should have a district committee. And there, you know, that would be made up of representatives from those building committees. In addition, I had heard, you know, at different events, you know, parents would come up to me, oh, I'd love to participate, I'd love to do more. So, you know, with Dr. Valenti's approval, Madeline and I opened it up again. There was a family communication that went out district-wide on February 29th. It was a letter explaining what the district committee is with an embedded Google form for folks to, you know, answer a couple of questions if they'd like to be considered. That is still open and receiving responses. We're going to keep it open until Friday. Again, we're not trying to exclude anyone, but we want to keep the number to a manageable level so that, you know, work can be done. And our first meeting is scheduled for March 20th. So that's that Thursday before vacation, and it'll be at the middle school in the evening. I'll say this since, you know, there might be folks watching at home. The first meeting, we felt it was important that it be in person, but any other meetings, we're thinking there'll be at least 1 or 2 more before the end of June, will either be on Zoom or have a Zoom option, because we know that that makes it more accessible for lots of folks. All right. And then what are we planning on doing at the district committee? First and foremost, share out the work of building committees in a little bit more detail than we had done tonight, and then talk about more ways to gather community engagement. A lot of the pictures that you see, you might recognize, they're from year 1 and year 2 of the We Are Eastchester celebration. And, you know, that certainly was a phenomenal community-wide event. We'd love to know what ideas folks have for, you know, additional, events like that one, you know, writ large or writ small, you know. And then the other piece is I've gotten some feedback from parents who have questions about our curriculum. How do we make decisions about curriculum? How are we choosing resources? Where does that all come from? So it may be that the next step in our work as a district might be to start taking a little bit of a closer look at curriculum. One of the principles from the New York State framework is inclusive curriculum and assessment. And when I look at that a little bit more closely, you know, we've talked a lot tonight about belonging and representation. So in inclusive curriculum and assessment, it's representation and belonging in our instructional resources and in our classroom practice. So this might be a step that the district committee would like to take. You know, stay tuned. I'm sure there'll be a lot of ideas that will be brought up when we meet in a few weeks. All right. So thank you very much. I don't know if you've got questions about the district committee. Yeah. Hi.
Thank you both for that presentation. So having been on the original district committee, it's really nice to see how far you've taken this work. And now sitting on the Greenvale Building Committee, I just want to say something about the conversations that we've had. We've had some very vulnerable and valuable conversations. And it's very clear to me, and I'm sure to everyone that was part of that as well, that the staff really don't look at this as some abstract idea, but really look at each individual student for who they are. The stories that they were saying about really recognizing them, again, belonging, looking up something if they're not familiar with it without even thinking twice about it. It was very clear that the staff takes this very seriously as well, but almost in just a very natural, intuitive way that they don't even necessarily have to, you know, give so much thought to, because they seem to really value these students. So thank you both for being part of that, and I know it's important to all of us, so thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, in the research that I did, my dissertation is related to culturally responsive education. And there's this quote from the woman that coined the term culturally responsive education that, you know, people would tell her, well, this isn't anything special. This is just what good teachers do. And I think that's exactly, Jackie, what you're getting at.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both very much. Yeah. So it's great having great leaders like Greg and Susan and Madeline who make things happen, and that's important for a district and its vitality. Any other questions that the board would have at this point? At our next March meeting, I know folks have been asking about our calendar. We would like to formalize that. It will be on the agenda, and the board has seen the calendar. We'll get you another copy, including the parent conference days that we've included. So that's something that will be coming up. And we're ready to talk about budget again next time we meet, so that anyone who has any additional questions can bring them to the fore.
Thank you, Dr. Valenti. And I believe along those lines, our next Board of Education meeting will be on Tuesday, March 19th, here in this room at 7:30. That will be a regular meeting, not a work session meeting. Are there any other comments, questions about the presentations this evening from any of the trustees? Great. Dr. Valenti, Dr. Stoll, Dr. Chester, Ms. LeBeau, thank you all so much for being here this evening and for participating in the work session. We appreciate it. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.